Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks once again for joining us here over a Child Link, where we have these discussions to really raise awareness on various social issues, particularly as it relates to men and boys. But this month, we're focusing a bit on the women. And this session today will be looking at economic empowerment and what that means in the context of women and gender-based violence. So we have with us here today Elon Alonzo, and we are supposed to have one other guest who will hopefully join us in a bit. Elon, for those who might not be familiar with you, would you just mind introducing yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elon Alonzo. I'm a woman, of course. I am the founder and programs manager for Sunbeam Career Development, which is a youth organization that caters specifically to help youths as they transition from education to employment and beyond. So I'm very glad to be here. I think economic empowerment is one that, transcends youth and adults, and it's an important topic to discuss, in the context of Guyana and the wider scope of this world. So thank you for having me here.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to your contributions today. I know you mentioned some of your work at Sunbeam. Before we move on, do you mind telling us a bit more about what that looks like?
Okay, so myself and partners, we come together and we provide and develop programs and services that help young people as they transition, like I said, from education to employment. That looks like skills development and building, as well as providing them a system of support that would help them to do two things. Begin with the end in mind, because they're just at the brink of finishing their education, but they're on the onset of, their futures and opening up something very different for them. And also to encourage them as well to let their lights shine, which means that we encourage them to determine their own futures, to channel their inner skills and also the resources that, they have within them and around them. The overall aim is to help them to become adaptable and resilient in the labor market. And that looks like anything, whether it is that they want to channel their passions in the arts and be a poet or a singer, or if they want to be an entrepreneur, if they want to join, the labor force in the employment sector, whatever it is that they envision, that's what we help them to be, because we believe that they should be the managers of their own futures.
Thanks so much for that. And it's really great to hear about the work that you're doing, focusing on job development, career development is extremely important, particularly when it comes to those now entering the job market.
Correct.
So yeah, it's
Correct.
really great to hear about that. Jenny, good afternoon. I see you have joined us. Would you mind introducing yourself? Ms. Bishop? Okay, so we can probably go ahead and she can join us a bit later. So yeah, back to you, Elon. So for those who might not necessarily be familiar with the term economic empowerment and what that means, how would you define it? What does women's economic empowerment look like to you? Elon, you're muted.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. For me, women's economic empowerment looks like, providing and enabling the access to skills and the resources that women need to access, manage, and develop those resources or finances, if we want to look at it in terms of the economic sense. It also entails us leveling the playing field that's out there, whether it be in employment, entrepreneurship, or just society. It's about targeting the socioeconomic needs that are specific and maybe different to men, and channeling it in a way that we can be equally, impactful in society. Right? It's about giving women a stake in economic decision making And even, in the homes, from the micro to the macro level, economic empowerment for women is essential. And we see it as, having them have a place and also uniquely catering to them in a way that they'll be able to develop.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And I certainly agree with your assessment.
Yeah. There's so much that us as women experience, and the gap between where we are right now and where we ought to be, that we need support and help. And the empowerment, that's what empowerment is all about primarily. So when we put all the words together, we can see that it's about strengthening, it's about creating that space for us as women. It's about helping us to become more than we are today. That's what it is about. Yeah,
I definitely agree with you, because a lot of times when it comes to the way women navigate society, economic empowerment, it's usually talked about, but not in the context of how it can necessarily really empower women and provide them with the necessary skill sets that they need. Ms. Bishop, I see you're joined to audio. Could you just confirm if you're hearing us? And
yes, I'm hearing you. I'm going to put on the video shortly.
Okay, great. Are you in a position to talk now? Okay, I guess not. All right, great. So back to you, Elon.
Yeah. So I can actually share about my experience in women economic empowerment. I actually just graduated out of the Sherry Blair Foundation's Access to Finance training that they have rolled out and piloted in Guyana for the very first time. And while I've been through education, I've been to several trainings and so on, the way how this program was tailored specifically hit on some of the pain points that we experience as women. And it allowed us to identify the developmental skills that we need. For instance, as part of the program, they highlighted that they did a research just at the beginning of 2022, and they found that 23% of women find it difficult to access finances because of one simple thing: the bias that is out there, that when they go to these financial institutions, they do not think, or within themselves, they don't believe that they're meant to be there. And then the other partners that you need to engage with to develop, to access finance, do not see them as being rightfully there, and learning things like pitching your business, being able to read financial documents, create them, are things that are essential that, most people do not have access to those things. And then when you apply it to the context of a woman who's looking to create and invest and is already limited from the allowance of doing that, to now not only having that passport, but also exactly how to navigate it, is so essential. At the end of it, I was able to pitch my business for the very first time, and I was able to have an invitation to speak more about having a financial arrangement, so it's important that you have these programs and arrangements for us, because what may naturally be or generally be thought of what is needed, there's a different kind of circumstance and scenario that women experience that you need to tailor directly to that.
I agree with you. The responses needed for women and economic empowerment needs to really be laser focused on them and the issues that impact them. So it's great to hear that, and congrats on that. Thanks so much. Ms. Bishop, for those who might not be joining, would you mind introducing yourself?
I am Orinthia Bishop. I'm a first-year psychology major at the University of Guyana. I'm also employed by the Ministry of Health as a dentist, where I provide dental services such as extraction, filling, cleaning to the general public.
Thanks so much, and thank
Also,
you
I'm
for
a
joining.
trained testing counselor,
Mhm.
and I'm a part of several organizations, one of which is Project Life Guyana, where we do a lot of humanitarian work.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, and thanks for joining us here today. Would you want to share a bit about the work that you do with the humanitarian project?
Okay, no problem. Just recently, in Project Life Guyana, there are like four of us, which is it's been run under the leadership of Mr. Viber Parvatan, who's the president, and we have Ambassador Rudy Collins and Dr. Mark. He's based in the US, and myself. So I'm the event coordinator. So basically, what happened? We would normally bring persons from overseas, primarily the USA, and when they're in Guyana, before they arrive, my responsibility is to organize outreaches where we will normally do dental and medical outreaches. And just recently, on the 21st of last month, we would have went up to Kuru, and we would have looked at a little over 200 patients where we provide dental services, which is extractions, and cleaning, and also we would have provide medical services where I had an oncologist with me, where she was offering breast examination and screening. Yes, so it's a nice organization, and I enjoy doing it because I'm able to touch the lives of a lot of people and also provide services that isn't that frequent in their communities.
Thanks so much for sharing that and for the work that you're doing, which is very, very important. So today we're focusing a bit on women's economic empowerment and really would like to get from you what your understanding of women's economic empowerment means.
Basically, my understanding is women getting out there and empower themselves, may it be financially, because traditionally, I mean, times has been changing because back in the day, it is the men doing everything. These days, women, and I must applaud them, getting out there and trying to do equal jobs just like the males. However, in some societies, you find that, yes, they're performing equally just like the males. However, the salary that is being received at the end of the month is somewhat different. So, there's a little bit injustice. And in terms of empowering women, we as women, I love the fact also that you guys are hosting this forum. At least, women who are looking there would be even more in shoes of empowering themselves and not just settling for mediocrity and maybe getting themselves up or pursuing a career or maybe a passion that they probably would have longed for to have in the past, where, they can work and they can be financially stable and they can accomplish so much things, even their home. They can probably buy a car because they would have been empowered educationally, also financially.
Yep, I definitely agree with you. It's very important for women to have that financial empowerment because it can really help them to make decisions that might otherwise be very, very restrictive. So, Ilan, I know you had mentioned previously that one of the main things that you see when it comes to women and access to finance is the issue of biases. So, my question to you, what are some of the main contributors to women's economic inequality in addition to that? Because I know that's a big one.
Well, first, if we can start by just the culture that we have in Guyana, that perpetuates so much bias because we have a culture of patriarchy here, whereby the man is considered to be the head, the decision maker, the bread breaker, and every single thing. And with that, the woman is considered to be lesser. And not only is she considered to be lesser, but she's also boxed in a certain space where she's boxed in the home. right? So that perpetuates some roles, such as her being the caregiver, the home manager, but not particularly in the sense of a general home manager, because there are some aspects too that in terms of the financial management that the man is considered that he should be the head, and he should be above that. Now, this is what happens in the home, but the sad reality is that it continues as we go out into the wider space of society. There is stigma and biases that are present in the workplace, whereby, women, the same familiar kind of expectations of a woman is now extrapolated into the workplace, whereby women are only termed to be successful or should only be in spaces like HR, administration, and so on. I think all of us may have seen a prominent organization put out their management and leadership team recently, and just one woman was on that leadership team, and it's quite indicative of what happens in society here and the workplace, whereby women aren't considered to be taking up those leadership roles. Now, even in that sense, women as an individual is treated differently that in the workplace as well. That constraint is a constraint to her economic empowerment in that space, because as a woman becomes pregnant, she's stigmatized. There is the determination that she, quote unquote, enters a gap period whereby she's supposed to be focused more on the child, and because of that she cannot manage her work properly. Women are not able to talk about their menstrual cycle at work. We're taught that we're more emotional, and all of those things create that glass ceiling for us in employment that limits our mobility. Even from the beginning, on the worldwide basis, a woman earns 77 cents when a man earns $1. So even before we enter the labor market and the workforce, we're already disenfranchised, no matter what skill we have, and then those women who do work, most of the time women occupy the service sector and the low-skilled jobs. These are the hotels, the hotel industry, the restaurants, the personal and professional services industry. And while it's so good that they're out working and they're being productive, the point is that this industry oftentimes is the first to be hit by circumstances such as environmental occurrences, political instabilities, economic fluctuations, and all of those things. So, let's look at COVID. When you look at in terms of the family structure and a decision to be made, who's to stay home with the children being at home and teaching, having to be self-taught and school taught and stuff like that. It's the women that often have opted out of the labor force for that, and these are some of the things that really affect us, from the micro to the macro level, because these biases are throughout the system, and these barriers to enter and to succeed are placed upon us even before we begin, So that, and then additionally, if we can look at even in the school systems, women are oftentimes the first to leave school, and though that our participation rates and so on have quite improved, we still have issues and biases that keeps us back from going farther, So these are some of the things that I think, hinders us as women, and that, we have as hurdles as we go forward.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything you just said. Ms. Bishop, do you have any additional thoughts when it comes to the contributors to women's economic inequality? You're muted.
Hi. Also, what you will find, as should have relates to the culture, and what the culture also and society, their demands as it relates to women, because a lot of times and a lot of things, the males get away with it. Meanwhile, women, we feel or we face the blunt of everything. Take, for example, it is okay, because we're talking about equality here, right? It is okay for a man to cheat. Society does nothing about it. Oh, he's a man. But let a female or a woman does that, she's being ridiculed, she's being called one name after another. So you find the injustice there. Male get away with a lot of things, meaning that they can do as they feel like, and nothing is being done. But I must applaud some women, some men also, because you find, for instance, like myself, after I would have I was pregnant at first, and my husband was telling me when the baby born that one of us have to give up our job. And, he was probably looking in my direction for me to give up my job to stay at home. And I tell him no. But how God may have it is that eventually he was a person at that time, wasn't working, so he had to stay at home with our daughter. But I'm just showing you the mindset and the way, the males actually would think. So he was home doing everything for baby, and I was the person working, which I enjoyed. But I think in order for this to change, I believe, some of the men, they should applaud and give some kind of credit for women, because as she would have rightfully stated that when it comes to, and I could share my personal experience with you, when it comes to education, yes, everything I do for my children. I have 2 children, one is age 5 and one is age 8. When it comes to sitting with them, like when we first started, you guys would have probably heard an echo in the background. Both of my children are on Zoom. I am step by step with them as it relates to their Zoom. If they have homework to do, I'm there with their homework. My husband, on the other hand, I literally have to pick fight with him in order for him to actually contribute into the development of these children education. So you find, apart from parenting, we have to nurture. Our roles as women is vast. And it's even more, there is even more demands that is required of us more so when you have a family, and it's even more challenging when you're married, meaning that you're in a committed relationship, because there are certain things that are expected of you, because your roles are being defined and stuff like that, because you hear, oh, this is not man work. It's not a man work to go in the kitchen and cook. It's not a man work to wash. It's not a man work to clean, all of these things. They said it's a woman work. The man these days, or I must say from back then, they have this kind of culture. Oh, they bring in money, and their responsibility is just to be inside of the yard and cleaning and these kinds of stuff. Meanwhile, our role is huge. And I believe that, more women should try to empower themselves and not just settle for the position in which they are. You have dreams, you have aspirations, you qualify yourself. The sky is the limit. I would often tell myself, I would often tell young people. So that's my contribution.
Yeah. And something you talked about what you do at home, and if you're to equate that, that's a full-time job, and persons often don't recognize that. So you're a woman, and it's like you work 2 jobs, and you aren't being compensated for one at all, and the next one you're already being disenfranchised because you're not, paid or rewarded at the same level of a man. So that's a sad reality of some of the things that, really impact us daily as a woman. I really think that it should be a cost. evaluation of how much, it would value, housework would value, and I think that will help in the empowerment as well, to realize the value that it has and how much, what you call your sweat equity is valued in, for the sanity and the organization of everybody. It's not just you, it's the whole household. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's been some research in the area of unpaid labor. And of course, unpaid labor is something that women primarily serve the function in. And one of the things it found was that when it comes to unpaid labor, it basically shoulders the economy, because those who are going out to jobs, where there are gaps in the system, it's unpaid care work that are primarily functioned by women. They're the ones really filling that gap and doing that without any monetary benefit. So yeah, I definitely think there needs to be more conversations around unpaid care and work that women primarily perform, because it's a lot. It definitely is a lot. Ms. Bishop, you were speaking recently about some of the challenges that you face within your own relationship when it comes to really moving forward in what can be seen as an equal partnership. So what do you think are some things that men can do to become more involved in women's economic empowerment?
First of all, shared responsibilities. The responsibility of the house must not only and solely be upon the woman, because if, for instance, like there is an housewife at home, she's married, but because she's an housewife and her husband is working, that must be her rules. It shouldn't be, because if she wants to empower herself and acquire a degree, here is it now, a little bit more would require of her time, meaning she has certain classes. So some of the roles in which, or some of the duties, I must say, in which she would normally perform, she may not be able to effectively carry out those. So here is it, or having a partner should be able to embrace our vision, embrace our goal, and assist with certain responsibility. In terms of her acquiring a career, and ends by her acquiring a career, she'll be getting money. And not only that, the family is going to be better, because the money that she is going to be getting after empowering herself is not just going to be for her, but it would be for the family in general.
Definitely. I think there's much work to do to help persons to realize the impact of women's empowerment on the family and the society overall. And with that, if men, go through a process of relearning and reculturing themselves to understand that women are just as equal as them, we can equally contribute, they then can see the benefit that it has upon their own well-being, because no longer are you considered to be the prime breadwinner, the prime producer of the home. Now you have a system of support between the two of you. So I think what's essential is that when we, engage the empowerment process of women, is that we include men in it, whether it be that we incorporate them in the training, so that, you look at it in terms of empowering an entire household, or you engage them in the teaching and the learning process too, because they do have value that they can share with us. And the truth of the matter is that sometimes we are on the outside of really what's going on, the nitty-gritties that are going on in organizations, in activities, and so on. So they need to open, they need to share, they need to let us know, edify us, and also to include us in these kinds of processes, and to understand that women empowerment and gender equality is not to tip a scale, it is to level it. Oftentimes when they hear that, they be saying, yeah, y'all, everything is for y'all, we ain't getting nothing, and all of those things. But the more we're able to develop ourselves, it's the more beneficial that it you get to benefit as well, you know. So it's a relearning, it's a reshaping process, and I think we need to involve them from the very start of it.
Yeah, that's really true. I definitely do agree with that. One of the feedback that has been had over the years when it comes to having various training sessions and empowerment sessions concerning women's financial stability is that, women would say, yes, I come to this, I learned this, and I might learn a few skills that I can earn from. But then they go home and their partners do not believe in that. So it's either they would take away their money or they stifle their growth. So it's really important that there's that type of conversation where men are included, of course, to let them understand that it's a collaborative thing. It's important for women to be economically empowered. And there are a lot of benefits to it, not only on the individual level, but the communal level also. So yeah, definitely a much wider conversation to be had there. And on that point of the role that men can play and also some of the restrictions, lack of access to financial stability for women has been linked to increased chances of violence against them. What do you think can be done to support these women?
Definitely, we need more programs and systems that will help to provide the skills development and education that is needed. I think too that we not only have to create these courses, but then we have to think of the end game in mind, that not only should we be empowering these women, but we ought to create women that are resilient. Because in the process of them developing and becoming empowered, their lives may change, because there are women who are in difficult situations in their relationships and partnerships that eventually, as they become confident and they learn how they can depend upon themselves, they will have to move from that. So when I talk about empowerment being specific to women, is because it has to be multifaceted. It's not just about focusing on teaching a woman to make money, but then at the same time, there's some internal things and some personal things that she has to learn. She needs to learn how to balance life. She needs to learn how to negotiate, how to plan, how to set goals, and all of those different things are extremely essential for her. And also that we need to ensure that we can have, talks on gender sensitive issues, just like domestic violence, because it may pose a threat to someone that you are, you've now found this confidence and awareness of yourselves that you can do better and that you can be better. So all of these things are important. Then on the government level and the policy level, we need some specialized things. We need specific allotments for women when it comes to the Department of Agriculture, when it comes to the access of land and capital and all of those different things that are very general, but then they are quite empowering for a woman once she becomes, she can reach for them. It helps, so those things are essential. It's an engagement process that is so wide, and we need to look at it beyond the level of just giving her, the tool in her hand for success, but actually giving her a key that she can open that door to the success as well.
Definitely agreed with that. Ms. Bishop, do you have any thoughts to add on what can be done to support women who lack access to financial stability, given that it can make them more vulnerable to violence?
Yes, this is, she would have said education. And I back that 100% because it's only through education. And I also believe that the government should looking to, particularly the Ministry of Human Services, they can do more to assist women in this area, as she would have stated that, through workshops and stuff like that. Yeah, they can do more, because here is it that I may not be knowledgeable. I want to empower myself. I want to be better, but how do I go about this? So they should have frequent workshops, have more, or should start social media, like advertisements or posts. And, by doing these things, after a while, it would open the eyes of women and they would fall into position and want to, or they may be into, sorry, and want to pursue such.
Thanks so much for that, Ms. Bishop. So I definitely agree with all the points that you ladies made. So also moving to the next question, which kind of ties into the prior one. What institutional and societal changes do you believe need to be made to promote women's economic empowerment?
It comes right back to having a real integrated and collaborative process to ensure that this thing called women's empowerment really, really happens in a true sense, in a sense that's developmental. And we can look at it from a bottom up approach or top down, because all has to be involved in women's empowerment. So if we want to look at it from our government, it means that we need policies that are created to one in its planning to be gender sensitive, to consider women, consider children, men, and everyone of a whole when you're planning these policies, and that even in the execution that it's mainstreamed in that kind of way, which looks like coming in and changing the culture of these organizations and the society that women are in, change the systems, the policies, and even those archaic kind of rules that say that a girl needs to have her hair slicked back and it needs to be flat. She can't have her fro out and all of those things that limits a woman from feeling confident and even feeling like she has a place at the table where she's placed at. Some of these things no longer, well, I would say in my mind, it never made sense. But at this point in time, it definitely doesn't make any sense. So these are some of the institutional things that they need to get back to the books and they need to look at. The second thing that I would touch on is that in everything that is done, we have an approach to learning here in Guyana that you give the person the information and then they either learn it or they unlearn it, but there's no follow-up, there's no support, there's nothing. And we need to look at education in a broader sense that continuity must happen. So even as we teach and we provide access to these resources, we need to ensure that support is there. And support is there from the level of you learning to the level of implementation in the home. So you need mentoring. There's a need for awareness and sensitization for all that are being do stakeholder assessments and all of those things so that you can engage everyone in that process, right? We need to break this bias that is out there that women are lesser than men. We definitely need to break that bias and to give women the access that they can be and they can do whatever they want to, however that looks at, no matter, what orientation they choose, what educational field they look to going, there's a place there for women and we ought to show them that, there's that place for them, so I think pretty much we need to do it on a wide and a more specific and integrated perspective for women to really break this bias and to help us as well to meet these goals that we have, as a nation and as a world. So thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Elon. Ms. Bishop?
I believe that if not an NGO, but I will more go with the government, they should set up an organization that focus primarily on on women, their needs, and ends. They would be able to empower them, because it is lacking, because they have a lot of ministries, I must say, but there isn't any that focus. I mean, yeah, human services, for example, but there isn't much that they can do that is just women oriented, women origin, nothing. They need to do that. So, I mean, they will have a place where they can go, or a place where they can call home, or just having a sense of belonging. Oh, I'm a part of this women organization, and this organization helped me to be empowered, and I would have learned this, I would have learned that. And hence, it would be like a big array, because from me, they would have started off maybe with 10 persons. And after a while, it would have gravitated to so much. So the word would reach near and far about how, you as an individual, you can actually come and to be empowered, and not just, it being like this. So it starts off with the government or an NGO that has, this big passion with empowerment. And I must applaud Chilling for actually putting on this forum. It shows, the direction in which they're looking and their interest and their value towards us women.
Thanks so much for that. I appreciate the responses. So is there anything that I did not ask on the topic of women's economic empowerment that you feel important to highlight, or last messages you would like to share? Do you want to go ahead first, Ms. Bishop?
I believe every woman should have a right to an education, a right to their own free will, and to do whatever they want, a right to finances, a right to job opportunity and equal salary, and performing the role as a male may would have. They should be able to have the same salary, a right to everything straight across the board. And only then will I believe that the males out there will get that kind of respect for us, respect for us female. Because if I'm to look into my profession, first it was male dominance. When you hear about the dentist, you visualize a male person. Over the years, it has gravitated differently. Where women, they are actually flooding this profession, and I must applaud them. So it's not just when you come to see the dentist, there is a male dentist you're gonna see. However, there are female dentists, so it's not just that. And also, for instance, engineers. Years ago, it's just male engineers and male electricians. Now, women, they're taking it upon themselves, and they're getting into different occupations. So it's not just primarily dominated by, but a lot of females now still need to be motivated. I wish if some females, they may be feeling down, just look around, just use somebody that you admire to mentor you, and for you to actually make this change in your life, and you can be empowered. It's not too late. You may be 50 and into your 60s. It's not too late for you to empower yourself. It's not too late for you to acquire a good education, or to even get that dream job you wanted. It's not too late. Thank you.
I love the fact that Ms. Bishop stated that, you should look out for an example, because we can talk about the educational systems and so on, and those are good, but then sometimes persons, even though it's available, they still not are able to access it. But there can be someone that you can look at, that you can pattern of, you know, there are many women out there who are successful. And one thing that is out there is that many times as women, we feel like we have to do things on our own. And we also feel like if we're either threatened or a threat to another woman. And that again is a bias that we need to break as us women. For us to really push women's empowerment, we need to act as a unit. And with that, we're able to move forward and at a faster pace. So it's important for us to network. It's important for us to find someone that we can partner, we can pattern after, because essentially, there's nothing that we lack within ourselves. I remember reading that concerning career planning, actually, that women plan more than men. But the problem is that oftentimes we don't execute our plans. And that's because we feel that we're not confident. When we look out into the world and we see things, you know, we see the barriers, we see men moving faster in their careers, we see it being difficult because we have a baby at the time and we didn't continue in school, you know, we don't believe that it's quite possible. But there's someone who did what you want to do. There's someone out there who's out there championing your cause. And all you need to do is to connect and be part of that. And that's why I was saying earlier that it's important that not only we teach, but we provide the support that is necessary for them to build their confidence, for them to build their identity, for them to understand that not only are you empowered, but then you have a seat at the table. You could create this table that you want to come and sit at, right? It's quite possible for us, and it's out there. We just need the access, and we need it to be offered specifically to us. That's all we're asking. I do hope, you know, this session was empowering for someone out there, and that, I mean, it's been a breath of fresh air for me, and that we can all join together and we can complement each other. We could learn our strengths, our abilities, and we can see how we can work to build with each other. We don't have to do it alone.
Thank you.
Just to add,
yes.
Just to add, there's some little example I want to share. Is that I was at a salon, and there was this young girl there, and they were talking about another young girl that was misbehaving bad. So as I listened to her, I get to understand something wasn't right. However, to make it short, she went to the they said the boys' school, the NOG, the girls' school. So she went to the NOG, but what happened? She would have gotten pregnant. She used to misbehave, and you know she would have realized doing this it didn't worth it. However, she got pregnant. She still went to school throughout her pregnancy. After the baby would have born, she had to stay home a little. And despite her having, at that time she was only 15. So there is that she was pregnant at 14, gave birth at 15, but she didn't stop there. She gave birth to the baby, and she was kind of caught up. She didn't even know that this young man that she was in this relationship with was actually married and was living home. You know, some of these men, how they take advantage on these young girls. However, the matter was called to court, and the guy and his wife, they take custody of the baby. But it affected her emotionally, but she said she believed that's the best thing for the child because she cannot provide everything that the baby needs because she's not working. But that would have given her an opportunity now to go back to school. And she is back at school, and right now she's in the process of writing her CXC because she says she's not going to give up. She's going to try, and she's going to be somebody The teachers at the school, they encourage her. They say, don't carry yourself like that. Ends are ending up at the salon to do her hair. So, you know, she was braiding up her hair, and I was like telling her, I said, you look so beautiful. Don't stop, continue that same passion. And I mean, you know, a lot of some of the persons who can actually motivate you or empower you are your teachers, you know. It can be your secondary teachers, it could be your tertiary teachers. Teachers sometimes see things in you that you don't even see in yourselves. And our biggest mentors and our motivators were our teachers. And she said when she finishes, like she said, one of the subjects she's having challenging, I think it was math. And the teacher said, no, man, you're a bright girl, you're gonna get it. And with those few words, this girl has been pushing and pushing. I'm so excited to hear in another few months when the result is out as to how she would have performed. I was privileged also to see the baby. She has a beautiful baby, and she just wants to write her exam, get a good job so that she can be able to provide for her child.
Yeah, that's a really great example. Thanks for sharing that. It shows the necessity of education, but also when it comes to the need for support. I mean, in that particular scenario, you know, having the baby taken away is not necessarily the support I'm speaking of, but when it comes to economic empowerment, one of the limitations is that, particularly if they have children, is that women don't necessarily get the support they need. So someone to watch the baby while they go to school, or someone to help out with finances. So those things are extremely important in the larger fight towards women's economic empowerment. So definitely, thanks so much for highlighting that. And yeah, I really do hope that she continues with her schooling and does what she wants to do. So thank you both once again for being here today and taking time. I really enjoyed our discussion. It was a very enlightening one, and I do know that those who are tuned in would have found it very helpful also. So I look forward to staying connected with you both, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Kimber, thank you. And
Thank you.
I must thank Highline, and you guys keep on doing the good jobs that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.